Breaking tonight, a fresh storm has hit Windsor. According to multiple palace insiders, Sarah, Duchess of York, has been asked to vacate Royal Lodge, the sprawling Windsor estate she has called home for decades. The decision, sources insist, is not merely about property or budgets. It's about the fallout from the growing crisis surrounding Prince Andrew and the quiet campaign now unfolding behind palace gates. The official line, as always, is polite and measured. No comment. But insiders close to the royal household say that King Charles's patience has worn thin. After years of reputational damage linked to Andrew's controversies, the king's advisors are determined to distance the crown from anything that reminds the public of scandal. And caught in that tightening circle, perhaps unfairly, is Sarah Ferguson herself. She's being squeezed out, one longtime courtier told the Daily Mail's royal correspondent. It's not just about Andrew's situation anymore. It's about who still protects him. Fergie has remained loyal, and loyalty can be dangerous when the palace wants a clean break. In other words, the royal downsizing that once sounded like a bureaucratic initiative, the so-called slimmed-down monarchy, is now becoming personal. Behind the scenes, the Queen consort, Camilla, is said to have played a decisive role. Sources describe her as keen to professionalize the household and to ensure that royal residences reflect the working members of the family, not those living on faded titles or lingering sympathies. But Fergie, it seems, didn't go quietly. Close friends claim she was devastated, furious, and determined not to be erased. One described the atmosphere inside Royal Lodge in recent weeks as thick with tension and betrayal. Another added that she feels like history is repeating itself. Another woman pushed out for knowing too much. What exactly she knows is the question now consuming royal watchers. Several commentators have pointed out that Ferguson, once inseparable from Princess Diana, witnessed years of private tension between the late princess and Camilla Parker Bowles. As one royal biographer put it tonight, if there's anyone alive who understands the real story of that triangle and what it cost the institution, it's Fergie. Theories began circulating within hours of the eviction news breaking. Some tabloids hint that Ferguson has been collecting receipts, her own phrase, reportedly, detailing how Camilla maneuvered her way into the royal hierarchy and consolidated influence over King Charles's private circle. Others dismiss it as classic Fergie melodrama, a desperate bid for relevance from a woman long sidelined. Still, timing is everything. The Duchess's latest children's book had just been released, and her public image was finally recovering after years of mockery and missteps. Now, she faces headlines that once again tie her to Andrew's disgraced legacy and to royal infighting at its most poisonous. A senior former aide commented that this was a convenient moment for certain people. He continued, "Every time Fergie looks like she's rebuilding, something happens that pushes her back into the shadow of Andrew's scandal." But this time, the push came from inside the house. Palace sources refused to confirm whether the Queen consort personally intervened in the decision, but multiple reports suggest that Camilla supported efforts to restructure residential allocations at Windsor. Translation: remove Fergie quietly, before another tabloid frenzy. It hasn't worked. The frenzy is already here. Royal correspondents say the mood inside Buckingham Palace tonight is uneasy, defensive, and watchful. The communications office has gone silent. Even the king's public appearances have taken on a brittle tone. And amid the silence, Fergie herself has not denied the story. In a cryptic remark posted briefly on social media before being deleted, she wrote, "Truth has a strange way of surviving exile." To some, it sounded like defiance. To others, a warning. Either way, the message is clear. This is not just a property dispute. It's a fracture line running straight through the heart of the modern monarchy. One royal insider summed it up bluntly: Camilla wants order, the king wants calm. But Fergie? She's not built for silence. If that's true, then tonight may only be the beginning. Because when loyalty turns into liability, and the ex-Duchess of York decides to speak, Windsor's walls may not be thick enough to contain what comes next. The headlines might make it sound like a domestic misunderstanding, one duchess snubbed by another. But those close to the palace say that the growing rift between Sarah Ferguson and Queen Camilla is far from trivial. At its core lies not just jealousy or bruised egos, but something much deeper: control over influence, image, and the unwritten power structure that defines who still matters inside the modern monarchy. It all began with what seemed like a simple publishing proposal. Earlier this year, Ferguson reportedly reached out to the Queen's Reading Room, the literary charity founded by Camilla, hoping to have her new children's book featured in its next list of recommendations. A small gesture, seemingly harmless. But, as one former palace staffer put it, Nothing that touches Camilla is small anymore. According to reports that first appeared in the Mail on Sunday, Ferguson's request was declined, allegedly without explanation. What followed was a tabloid frenzy. Words like snub, humiliation, and royal rivalry filled the headlines. To the public, it looked like another catfight in tiaras, the kind of glossy royal drama that papers love to sell. But to those inside the system, it felt deliberate. Camilla's reading room isn't just about books, one insider claimed in a quiet interview this week. It's about loyalty. Being featured there signals you're part of her circle, a supporter, an ally, or at least someone who knows how to play by her rules. Fergie was never going to fit that mold. Others agree. The reading room, which began as an Instagram passion project during the lockdowns, has evolved into a powerful cultural platform. Every book it promotes enjoys an instant sales surge and a royal seal of intellectual prestige. Authors and publishers court the Queen's favor, knowing that a recommendation from her charity can transform a niche title into a bestseller. But behind the polished mission statements and charity rhetoric, sources whisper about a more selective process, one that, in the words of a former Clarence House communications aide, rewards those who flatter and excludes those who remember too much. It's no secret that Camilla's inner circle has been cautious about figures linked to the late Princess Diana. The Queen Consort's decades-long journey from royal mistress to monarch's partner remains a sore point in Britain's collective memory, and any reminder of that turbulent era is seen as a potential PR hazard. Fergie, said one commentator, is a walking reminder of the past, of Diana, of scandal, of everything the monarchy wants to leave behind. To her credit, Ferguson has tried to reinvent herself. From best-selling novelist to charity ambassador, she has rebuilt a career that once seemed irredeemable. But her latest setback, the public rejection from Camilla's initiative, seems to have hit a nerve. She took it personally, a close friend revealed. Not because she needed the promotion, but because she knows how these decisions are made. They pretend it's policy, but it's politics. The friend went further, suggesting that Ferguson believes Camilla has been quietly consolidating her influence through cultural diplomacy, controlling which voices, writers, and public figures receive royal validation. It's like soft power through literature, they said, and it's working. Camilla is rewriting who belongs in the royal story. For weeks, the tension simmered beneath the surface. Then, quietly, Ferguson began speaking to people, journalists, former courtiers, even a few sympathetic MPs. Her message, according to one of those briefed, was clear. The monarchy can't afford to repeat Diana's mistakes. The timing of these whispers raised eyebrows. Camilla, newly settled into her role as queen, was said to be furious about what aides described as a campaign of innuendo. Sources at Clarence House pushed back hard, insisting there had been no snub, no power play, and no personal feud. A spokesman for the Queen stated simply, "Book selections for the reading room are made independently, and according to literary merit." But few in royal circles believe coincidences anymore. "You don't need to be a conspiracy theorist," said a veteran journalist, "to see the pattern. People who stand too close to Diana's memory tend to find themselves gently moved aside." Oh, Fergie's defenders are now suggesting something even more explosive, that the so-called snub was never about literature at all, but about silencing her. A well-placed source hinted that Ferguson had come across sensitive correspondence from years ago. Messages, perhaps, that could expose how Camilla secured her influence in the early days of Charles's reign. The claim remains unverified, but it has been enough to send royal reporters scrambling. Meanwhile, the palace appears to be closing ranks. The King's office has maintained a strict no-comment stance, while Camilla has pressed ahead with a schedule of literacy events, smiling serenely through the storm. But the calm, observers say, feels rehearsed, brittle even. "She knows Fergie isn't harmless," said a former household insider. "Sarah's reckless, yes, but she's also incredibly connected, and when she's hurt, she talks." Oh, as the public waits to see whether Ferguson will retaliate, the question looms, is this just another royal misunderstanding, or the opening act of a scandal that could shake the monarchy's carefully polished image? Because if history has taught the Windsors anything, it's that once one duchess starts speaking, the echoes can last for generations. Royal commentators thought the story had peaked. A rejected book proposal, a bruised ego, a few sharp headlines. But inside Kensington Palace, something more serious was unfolding. In midsummer, Catherine, Princess of Wales, reportedly received a private letter from Sarah Ferguson. No official courier, no digital trail, hand-delivered by one of Fergie's longtime staff. A source close to the princess told the Times that Catherine wasn't supposed to open it in front of anyone. The envelope bore the York crest, pressed in red wax. "It felt like something out of another century," said the insider. "No one sends letters anymore, especially not letters like that. What the Duchess wrote has not been confirmed, but fragments of its contents have already leaked. And if those fragments are accurate, Ferguson's words were not an apology or a plea. They were a warning. She told Catherine to be careful," said a senior royal correspondent, "that the same forces that silenced Diana were alive and well, and that Camilla was using her position to reshape the royal narrative." The letter reportedly accused the Queen Consort of orchestrating what Fergie called a cultural erasure, the slow removal of every woman in the family who carried the emotional legacy of Diana. "They don't burn icons anymore," Ferguson allegedly wrote. "They overwrite them." For those who remember the rawness of the 90s, the phrasing is unmistakably Fergie. Dramatic, self-aware, half confession, half prophecy. But for the Princess of Wales, still recovering from months of private health struggles, the timing was combustible. "Catherine didn't want to fight," said one of her aides. But she couldn't ignore the letter. It wasn't gossip. It read like evidence. Behind palace walls, the message set off quiet panic. Staff debated how to handle it, file it, destroy it, or quietly return it. The king's private secretary, according to a source, advised containment. William, protective as ever, urged his wife to stay out of it. But insiders say Catherine kept the letter. She slipped it into a locked drawer in her private study at Adelaide Cottage. Since then, royal watchers have noticed subtle shifts in her public demeanor. Fewer appearances with Camilla, no overlapping engagements, a chill on camera that the tabloids call the Windsor frost. When reporters asked whether rumors of tension between the two royal women were true, palace spokesman brushed it off as fiction. But the fiction seemed to mirror reality too closely. "There's a cold war of smiles," one photographer said after a joint charity event. "They stand next to each other for the cameras, but there's no warmth. You can feel the gap." Meanwhile, Fergie vanished from sight. Her social media accounts went dormant, her scheduled interviews quietly canceled. Then, 2 weeks later, a journalist from ITV received a package, a photocopy of what appeared to be part of the York letter. The excerpt read, "If she, Camilla, defines what grace looks like, then Diana's ghost will have died twice. Don't let that happen, Catherine." The authenticity of the leak hasn't been verified, yet its effect was immediate. British talk shows exploded with speculation. Was Ferguson warning Catherine or threatening her? And what did she mean by grace? According to royal commentators, the answer may lie in Camilla's long-term strategy. "She's been quietly rebranding the monarchy's feminine face," said Dr. Helena Marsh, a historian of royal communication. "Camilla is shaping what the public sees as acceptable womanhood within the crown. Calm, unshakable, pragmatic. That's not Diana, and it's not Catherine either." By positioning herself as the steady matriarch, Camilla had effectively recast the monarchy's emotional tone. And if Fergie's letter was right, that recasting wasn't accidental. "Camilla doesn't raise her voice," said a former aide. "She raises her image. That's her power." Still, no one inside the palace dared confront the Queen Consort directly. "To question Camilla now is to question the king's judgment," explained a senior courtier. "That's a line no one will cross." Except, perhaps for Fergie. A friend of the Duchess insists she acted out of conscience, not vengeance. She'd seen what silence did to Diana. She wasn't going to watch Catherine go through the same isolation. But others aren't convinced. "It's always the same with Fergie," one ex-press officer sighed. "She sets fires and then claims she was just holding the match." Still, the letter's existence, even unproven, has changed the atmosphere. For the first time in years, reporters whisper about the Diana factor returning to the palace. The idea that the late princess's shadow still shapes every decision, every photo, every carefully worded press release. And if that's true, then the monarchy's carefully rebuilt unity may be far more fragile than it appears. Because once private correspondence turns into public prophecy, it's no longer a feud between duchesses. It's a generational reckoning, a question of who defines the soul of the modern royal family. As one insider put it, Camilla has the crown, Catherine has the public, and Fergie? She has the memories. That's a dangerous combination. And so, behind the glittering facade, another invisible line has been drawn. The next move, whether by Camilla or by Catherine, could determine which version of the crown the world believes in. The invitation arrived without warning, embossed cream card, handwritten by an assistant, sealed with the royal crest. A dinner at Clarence House. Guests, just two. Queen Camilla and Sarah, Duchess of York. No staff, no cameras, no PR minders. To outsiders, it looked like an olive branch. To those who know Camilla, it looked like a chess move. Camilla doesn't invite people to dinner to reminisce, said a veteran royal correspondent. She invites them to confirm who's in control. The dinner took place on a Thursday evening, just after the palace's official denial of any feud between the two women. Yet, according to a former security officer stationed near Clarence House, the atmosphere that night was ice. Fergie arrived in a black coat, no entourage, and was escorted straight into the Queen Consort's private dining room. Inside, the table was set for two, white lilies, silver cutlery, and a single bottle of Bordeaux that, notably, remained unopened throughout the night. According to a source briefed later by one of the staff, Camilla didn't drink a drop. She wanted clarity, not comfort. What happened during the next 90 minutes has become palace legend. Aides claim that the conversation began cordially, then turned sharp. Fergie asked about the reading room. Camilla brushed it off. "It's a matter of editorial policy," she said. "Nothing personal." But Ferguson pressed harder. "Then why erase me?" she asked, her voice reportedly trembling. "Why pretend people like me never existed?" Camilla's response, according to the same insider, was chillingly calm. "Sarah, you erased yourself. I'm just tidying up the picture." That line, now repeated across every royal blog in Britain, has become shorthand for the power shift inside the modern monarchy. One woman cleaning the house, another being swept out with the dust. What Camilla didn't know, or perhaps underestimated, was that Fergie had come prepared. Hidden beneath her silk shawl was a discreet recording device, a gift from a journalist friend. She pressed record minutes before stepping through the door. She wanted proof, the source confirmed. Proof that Camilla wasn't just the charming grandmother the palace sells to the public. No one outside Ferguson's immediate circle has heard the full recording. But snippets, whispered through the corridors of Fleet Street, suggest that Camilla said more than she should have. One alleged quote, "Diana never learned her place. Catherine will, or she won't last." Another, "Some women mistake attention for respect. The monarchy can't afford that mistake twice." If genuine, those words could devastate the carefully cultivated image of the Queen Consort as a figure of stability and discretion. "It's the nightmare scenario," said a media strategist who has worked with royal charities. "The Queen Consort can survive gossip, even dislike, but not the perception that she's vindictive." By the time the dinner ended, the temperature between the two women had dropped below polite civility. Fergie reportedly stood to leave first, declining the driver offered by Clarence House. "No thank you," she said. "I know my way out." Within 24 hours, whispers of the dinner that went wrong had reached palace reporters. Clarence House issued no statement. Buckingham Palace referred all inquiries back to them, an elegant way of saying, "Don't ask us." Meanwhile, Ferguson disappeared again from public view. Her team cited personal commitments and travel abroad, but royal insiders believe she spent the following week consulting lawyers and journalists. "She knew she was sitting on something nuclear," one friend said, "but she also knew what happens to people who challenge the crown. She had to decide whether to survive quietly or go down fighting." In a rare comment to a magazine weeks later, Fergie said only this: "Sometimes the truth is uncomfortable, but it's still truth." The line was widely interpreted as confirmation that the recording existed and that it was damning. For Camilla, the fallout was immediate but invisible. Her aides tightened media access, canceled an upcoming interview series, and reinforced a new rule: no off-the-record remarks, ever. Aides described her as tense but composed. The king, meanwhile, reportedly avoided the topic altogether, telling his private secretary, "These women have been at war for 30 years. I've learned not to interfere." But interference may no longer be optional. As one senior palace insider admitted, "If that tape is real, it's not just a scandal, it's a threat to the monarchy's credibility." And somewhere outside London, a woman who once married into the royal fairy tale now holds the recording that could fracture it. The same friend who confirmed its existence summed it up quietly: "Fergie doesn't want revenge. She wants the truth out there. But once you open that door, you can't close it again. Because if even half of what's on that recording is real, the hierarchy, the cold precision, the manipulation, then the question isn't whether the monarchy will survive the revelation. It's whether the world will ever look at its queen the same way again." By autumn, whispers had turned into panic. A recording, 17 minutes long, was now being spoken of in every newsroom, every royal corridor, every discreet club where former courtiers still traded gossip for gin. No one had heard it in full, but everyone seemed to know it existed. And for Queen Camilla, that rumor alone was enough to set the palace on high alert. It's real. One Fleet Street editor insisted on a late-night call to a producer. She recorded the dinner. They verified the timestamps. Fergie's got the tape. All less. The story first broke in the Mirror, under the headline, "Ferguson's secret tapes could shake the palace." By morning, the front pages echoed the same word, betrayal. Clarence House declined to comment. Buckingham Palace, unusually, issued a brief statement, emphasizing the dignity and unity of the crown. Behind closed doors, however, aides were scrambling to contain what one called the most serious reputational threat since the Sussex interviews. Hell. So, what's on the tape? The speculation is relentless. According to insiders who've been briefed, Camilla can be heard making sharp, dismissive remarks about both the late Diana and the current Princess of Wales. The most quoted line, now burned across British Twitter, is allegedly, "We don't need another Diana." If true, the phrase is catastrophic. It confirms every fear her critics ever had, said veteran royal correspondent Paul Harrison. It suggests Camilla still sees herself in competition with Diana's ghost, and worse, that she views Catherine as a potential threat to her public standing. Even the palace's most loyal journalists struggled to defend her. "You can't spin contempt," one admitted. "Not when it sounds like that." Within days, legal teams were mobilized. Letters warning of defamation and misuse of private communication began landing on editors' desks. The palace's media strategy became clear: deny the tape's authenticity, question Fergie's motives, and remind the public that recording a private conversation is deeply unethical. But the problem wasn't the ethics, it was the pattern. Every time Camilla's team tried to quash the rumor, it rebounded louder. "They overplayed it," said a PR consultant who once worked for the king. "When you panic that fast, people assume there's something to hide." Meanwhile, the ex-Duchess of York remained silent. She neither confirmed nor denied. But her silence, as one columnist observed, sounded deliberate, like someone waiting for the right moment to press play. Anonymous posts began appearing on social media, claiming to quote lines from the recording. Some were obvious fabrications. Others felt eerily specific. Subtle inflections, pauses, background noises. It didn't matter whether they were true. The myth had already overtaken the facts. Catherine and William stayed out of sight. Insiders say the Princess of Wales was deeply unsettled by the reports. "If those words are real," a family friend confided, "they cut straight through her, not just as a royal, but as Diana's daughter-in-law." Inside Buckingham Palace, damage control meetings reportedly turned heated. One senior aide warned that, if the tape is ever released, public sympathy will swing back to Diana's legacy and away from the current queen. For a monarchy built on image, that shift would be fatal. Still, not everyone believes Fergie intends to release it. "She's not stupid," said royal commentator Elaine Grant. "She knows that publishing it would destroy her too. The recording is leverage, not a confession, a weapon, not a statement. But even an unused weapon can change a war." The palace has begun quietly sidelining Ferguson's charities, freezing her access to royal events. One insider called it a soft exile. Another was blunter: they're cutting her off before she decides to use the tape. And yet, no matter how the institution tries to smother the scandal, the sound of that one sentence, "We don't need another Diana," keeps echoing through public imagination. Because the truth no longer matters as much as the perception. And the perception is simple: that behind the palace's polished facade, the ghosts of old rivalries still whisper, and that one voice, captured on a hidden recording, could tear open wounds the monarchy has spent 25 years trying to heal. If the tape ever surfaces, it won't just question Camilla's judgment. It will question the entire story the crown has told about itself. By winter, the storm turned inward. Cameras no longer waited outside Royal Lodge. Reporters no longer camped at Clarence House. The story had gone quiet, too quiet. Then, just as the press began to move on, another headline hit the morning front pages. Sarah Ferguson, under investigation for misuse of charity funds. The timing was suspiciously perfect. Within hours, palace sources confirmed that the Charity Commission for England and Wales had opened an inquiry into transactions linked to Children in Read, one of Fergie's longtime literacy foundations. The report alleged that several donations had been diverted through a private publishing company based in Switzerland, the same address where Ferguson had been living since her sudden disappearance. It looked, on paper, like a financial scandal, but to those who'd watched the royal feud unfold, it smelled like payback. "This isn't coincidence," said one former royal aide. "The moment she became dangerous, they made her disposable." Clarence House issued a curt statement supporting the highest standards of transparency across all royal-adjacent charities. The Queen consort appeared the next day at an event on Of all subjects, financial ethics and philanthropy. Calm, smiling, immaculate. On her lapel, a diamond brooch in the shape of a York rose glimmered under the flashbulbs. A gesture? A warning? Or both? Insiders say the investigation could take months, but already the impact was clear. Fergie's public image collapsed overnight. Sponsors froze deals. Publishers backed away from her next book, The Queen's Shadow, and her once loyal allies began keeping their distance. She's been silenced without a word, a friend told The Guardian. They didn't need to arrest her, just accuse her, and let the headlines do the rest. Even so, whispers persist that Ferguson still holds the original recording, tucked away somewhere safe. Some say she's passed it to her lawyers. Others claim she left copies in trusted hands. Either way, the balance of fear has shifted. The monarchy may have reclaimed control, but it has done so under a cloud of suspicion. At Windsor, palace aides insist the Queen Consort remains focused and unshaken. Yet the tone of official briefings has grown colder. They're closing ranks, a royal correspondent noted. The lesson is clear. You don't challenge the Queen and walk away untouched. Meanwhile, Catherine, Princess of Wales, made her first public appearance in weeks, understated, poised, wearing a cream coat and the very same York rose brooch. The gesture sent social media into meltdown. Was it solidarity with Ferguson, or a subtle reminder that not everyone inside the family had forgotten her? For now, no one knows where Fergie is. Her phones are off. Her official website has been wiped, but in an encrypted message leaked to a journalist and verified by 2 independent sources, she allegedly wrote just one line: "Truth doesn't need a microphone, it just needs time." And so the game resets. Camilla stands unchallenged, her image intact. But beneath the polished portraits and carefully scripted smiles, a single question lingers like smoke in the halls of Windsor. What happens when the truth finally speaks? Because if history has taught us anything, it's that royal secrets never stay buried, they just wait for the next storm. Thank you for watching this special report. If you've been following our Royal Files series, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the story of Fergie, Camilla, and the Queen's Shadow is far from over.